Commonwealth's attorneys and I have concluded that the NCAA sanctions were overreaching and unlawful.
Someone's got to develop a product that you and I, as a consumer, are going to want to buy.
The country needs a comprehensive energy plan.
Good morning and welcome to this edition of For the Record. Andrew Calista here once again. Pleased to welcome in our guest this morning, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, Paul Clifford. Paul, thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
Andrew, it's great to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Now, you were down at the Tax Slayer Bowl, right, but you're really just getting your feet wet and actually, I should say, heating your seat up a little bit, taking the post January 16th. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great trip down there to Jacksonville. I don't think we lost that game. I think we just ran out of time. But it is great to finally be back home here in Pennsylvania and at Penn State in this role.
Now, you've been all around the country, different alumni associations, universities, from UConn out to Oregon. My question is, Penn State fans know this from the Lift for Life. There is Happy Valley, Oregon, a great Penn State family out there that makes the trek every year in for the Lift for Life. Why leave the great West Coast in that perfect atmosphere to come to central Pennsylvania again?
Yeah, you know, I'm an East Coast guy. We just spent the last 2 years out in Oregon, had a fantastic time, loved that experience. But I always said to myself, if I had the opportunity to get back to Pennsylvania and especially get back to Penn State, that I wouldn't pass that opportunity up. The best alumni association in the country, and as somebody who's built their career in higher ed over the past 20 years managing alumni associations, it's both a challenge and opportunity that I had always had my sights on.
Now, before we get into those opportunities and challenges, a little bit about the background. You're from Eastern Pennsylvania,
right,
undergrad at Bloomsburg University.
Right. So grew up in Cunningham, went to West Hazleton High School, pretty close proximity to our Hazleton campus that we have up there. And I'm a 1996 graduate of Bloomsburg. I had a great time out there, was a walk-on on the football team there, played for Coach Danny Hale, and made lifelong friends.
Now, for any of our viewers that want to go scout out the Cunningham area, I'm going to warn you, there is a speed trap there connecting 80 and 81. I'm a frequent target of the PSP. Before we go into that any deeper, the attractiveness of the job. Obviously, you mentioned the depth of the Alumni Association, 675 living Penn State alumni, 177,000 dues-paying alumni. Right. Obviously, big opportunity there right off the top.
Well, I grew up in a Penn State household, in the Penn State family. My dad's class of 72 from the engineering school. And so my connection with Penn State started as a 6-year-old sitting on the Lion Shrine coming out here. And so I've always loved this university. But it wasn't until I got into higher education professionally that I realized not only is it a great university that I grew up loving, but it's among the best in terms of alumni associations in the world, if not the best. And so the opportunity to come back here and practice the craft that I've been honing for the past 20 years at a place that means so much to my family and to my friends and to all my people growing up, it's a tremendous honor and one that I don't take lightly.
Myself, just like you, my parents went to Penn State. Right. I did not go to Penn State. Many members of my family went to Penn State. I was always told I was a disappointment when I went to a different school by certain members of my family. Not my mom and dad, just certain aunts and uncles were disappointed that I didn't go to Penn State. For so long, when you're growing up, you're told that Penn State is the special place, as you mentioned. Right. You've seen multiple universities, especially Oregon. You could consider that a peer in stature to Penn State. How is Penn State different and maybe better in that little bit of experience that drew you back here?
There's nothing that quite prepares anyone professionally for the scale and the scope of Penn State. It stretches from border to border in one of the largest states in the country, from the students we recruit to the economic impact to the 24 Commonwealth campuses. It's just it's an enormous operation, and so nothing really compares to it. To say that Oregon's a peer is probably really kind to Oregon, right? And so, no, Penn State is a special place. A lot of schools say that, but there's no place that really is ever compared to the across-the-board excellence that we not only experience but expect here at Penn State.
Obviously, you have the love for Penn State. At the same time, a job has to be a fit, because if you just go for the love of a place, sometimes things don't work out. What did you see that this was the fit in the job itself that matched your skill set?
Yeah, well, I've been preparing my entire career to manage alumni associations, and as I shared the news of this opportunity with my friends, they were friends in the business. They're like, "Are you crazy? Why are you going back to Penn State? Do you know about the lawsuits? Do you know about what's going on there over the past 4 years?" And my answer was quick and simple. It was, when you truly care about something, care about a person, care about a place, you don't run away from it in bad times. You run towards it. And so I see myself as being uniquely positioned from a professional skill set, but also from a personal and in my heart kind of skill set to really lead the Penn State Alumni Association with a passion and fervor and professionalism that it deserves.
You mentioned the lawsuit. We'll get into that a little bit more
Sure.
in the next block. But first, kind of going in that direction. There's a divided alumni base in here.
Right.
How do you bring those together?
Yeah, I think by placing the Alumni Association at the center of all perspectives is the best position for the Alumni Association to be. You know, I've heard people talk about our side and their side and us and them. And the fact of the matter is that with any issue that goes on at a university, there's not a one side or other side, there's 10 sides, right? And so for an alumni professional or an alumni association to truly represent the 640,000 alumni, as you said earlier, we need to be able to articulate all of those perspectives to the university and hope that the university makes decisions based on all the perspectives of their alumni. So that's where I try to put myself.
Paul, with those challenges, obviously brings the great opportunity. How soon do you plan to instill some of those things that you want to maybe change with that?
It's already in place. I mean, just the way that I've had an open ear and an open mind to everybody that has reached out to me. The level of transparency that people can expect from the Alumni Association has already been put in place. This isn't something new that Paul Clifford's bringing, but it's something that Paul Clifford's definitely going to continue and grow upon. And so I think those who have taken the opportunity to meet me and have heard me talk about kind of how I view the role of the Alumni Association in the life of a university, I think that it's resonated.
You're watching WHVL's For the Record. We are talking with Penn State Alumni Association CEO Paul Clifford. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, getting his seat warm in his new post, getting our seat warm here on the set. Paul, you mentioned in the first block some of the challenges. One of those was the lawsuits that have been filtering in all across the university, but the Alumni Association has one currently going on. Where does that stand if you're able to talk about it, and how does it come to a resolution that both sides are happy and there's no bitterness on one side or the other that's going to lead to further?
Yeah. So all lawsuits have been settled and are no longer active, and all of that was settled before I came here. Okay. And so really I have an eye to the future. I have the experience of managing alumni associations all around the country, and just hope to bring those best practices here to Penn State, and in many ways continue some of the best practices that have been in place. But trust has been lost, right? And I don't think you regain trust through lawsuits or through any kind of contention. I think you rebuild trust by one, the actions, and letting your actions speak for you louder than words. But two, making sure that you have an open mind and an open ear, and that you have that level of accessibility to all perspectives. And so that's how I'm going to approach it, Andrew, and that's really the only way I know how to do it.
If you can indulge me a little bit.
Sure.
I have a quote here because the gist of the question is, how do you basically get that trust, and maybe what are the plans? But this was a post that was online by a member of the Executive Council. Before you got here, this was related to the fall Alumni Council meeting. It said, some current council members feel our views on government are completely irrelevant simply because it's our first council meeting. And there was little acknowledgement of the fact that we were elected by votes of 7,000 plus alums as opposed to a more narrow group of alumni. It further goes on to say, it's disappointing that the Alumni Council leadership, again, this is all prior to your arrival, felt it was necessary to lecture new members on the confidentiality of all Alumni Council meeting proceedings with the threat of removal if violated. The one issue I have with that is the confidentiality part of that, because you are obviously well aware of everything that's taken place here.
Right.
Before you arrived, there was a big push for transparency. Transparency was going to be all the key, but it seems that that's not the case prior to your arrival here. How do you go about adjusting that and the re-engaging of the alumni that have been lost?
Right. Regardless of how, and this is how I'm going to approach it moving forward, and so not necessarily commentary on how it was in the past, but regardless of how people made their way to the council and to the board, that's going to be irrelevant to me in terms of how I treat them with respect and have respectful discourse, how I listen to their opinions, how we evaluate their opinions. What I've said to people is, I'm going to respect your position. I'm going to always listen. We're not going to always disagree, but I'm not going to think that you're any less of a Penn Stater or any less of a viable contributor to the progress of the association just because we disagree. And so that's how I'm going to approach it. Again, not an indictment of how we've done it in the past, because those leaders in those situations are dealing with things that hopefully I won't have to deal with moving forward. But I will tell you that this will, the thought of having closed sessions and the thought of having this super sensitive view of confidentiality is not something that has been part of my past. Alumni associations that I've been involved with have not had the level of contention. And so, the work that we do is about lifting up a great university. It's about supporting the 640,000 alumni through the 177,000 members that we have. It's about bringing glory and exposure to the great work that our students are doing on campus, both in the classroom, on the athletic fields, and in their philanthropies. There's nothing confidential about that, and that's that's where the focus of the Alumni Association should be, and we should be singing that from the mountaintops, not keeping that. The only time that I've ever been part of confidential situations is when it's involved a lawsuit. I've never been involved in that personally, but would understand that, and personnel issues. Other than that, the work of the association, our business model, investment strategies, audits, strategic plans should be open for all to view.
Does it kind of fire you up that maybe you could be the guy that brings closure to finally a very rough sea that Penn State's been going through?
I mean, sir, I'd be lying if I didn't say that that's top of mind. Not from a legacy perspective in terms of what's my impact going to be here at Penn State, but to get Penn State back to the way it was when I was coming here as a 6 and 7 and 10 and 12-year-old, to get that collegiality, that spirit that if you're an opposing fan coming to Penn State, that you're going to be treated with respect and that you're going to be welcomed. I think we've kind of lost that amongst our community, not with opposing fans, but with each other. And so if I can play a small role with a team of people that's going to be able to bring the community back together, then that's certainly a role that I relish and look forward to playing.
Over the past 4 years, at a certain point, you had 100% of leadership here, and gradually, as elections have taken place, the needle slowly began to tilt more towards a 60-30 type split. How do you plan, do you think that the split needs to be more of from old leaders to a healthy balance of new leaders, or how do you think that split should go?
So I'm not exactly sure the split that you're referring to, but what I would say is that at an alumni association, or at anything really associated with governance, right? Whether it's an association, it should reflect the constituency that you're serving. And so as our alumni population gets younger and younger, with 170,000 graduates over the next 10 years, certainly our representation and leadership should be reflective of the shifting demographics. We were talking off air about students from all over the world now coming to Penn State. So how do we make the Penn State Alumni Association relevant through a representative way to all Penn Staters now, regardless of where they come from? I think that's how I kind of look at who should be leading the association. It should be really reflective of the demographics that we serve, or else we can't really serve it as holistically as we need to.
Definitely a challenging process. Look forward to see how that all goes in the future. You're watching For the Record with Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome back to For the Record. Time to close out our segment with CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, Paul Clifford. Paul, we left off talking about some of the negatives, and we're going to close that. I should say negatives. Let's say challenges. Let's be positive. We're going to say challenges. Positives and the challenges that are facing Penn State. One of those things, I think the perception of some of the alumni that you have to re-engage and get back into the fold is how to go not against the Board of Trustees, but work with the Board of Trustees. How does the Alumni Association say, because they are a governing thing, that the Alumni Association be able to challenge them on certain things?
So, I think challenge is the wrong word, and maybe not the way that I think we would position the Alumni Association as approaching concerns, if you will, with the university. How I would say is, as the leader of the Alumni Association or as a collective alumni council, I think we should be representing voices and saying, here's what we're hearing from our constituents, and we think that it's important for you to know as you begin to make decisions about the future of Penn State. And so it's more of a collaborative effort with the trustees and more of a sharing of information than anything that I would envision would be contentious. Now, will we have disagreements? I'm sure. I mean, there's not a family I know that agrees on everything. And yet, if we still, view it as a family and trying to do what's best for Penn State, I think if we all come to that with that level of trust in each other, there's no doubt we can accomplish great things together. So that's how I plan to approach, and how my leadership style kind of dictates how we'll look at those kind of opportunities.
Gotcha. $12 million budget, we'll say $12 million plus for the PSAA. Obviously, you want more funds, fundraising, a big part of that. Plans going forward on how that budget's going to be spent and how the fundraising efforts going forward are going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the timing has been fantastic for me to come in. We've just sunsetted our last strategic plan, and so it gives me the opportunity to come in and build a plan with our leaders and with the council and really the talented staff that we have at the Penn State Alumni Association to build a plan for the future. I've said, and you've heard my colleague Roger Williams say, that Penn State is the biggest, best, and most ambitious alumni association in the world. And yet, the formula that got us to where we are today, to being widely regarded as the top alumni association, isn't necessarily going to be that formula for the next 20 years, right? Recent graduates make consumer decisions in a different way. They look at philanthropy in a different way. And so, whereas, the traditional model has been appeal to pride, appeal to Penn State pride, and Penn Staters will join. And that'll still certainly be a big part of how we approach things in the future. But we also have to make sure that we remain relevant with the changing demographics of the alumni that we serve. And so that's talking more about the impact the association has at the university, talking more about the services that we can provide for alumni, whether it's career-related services or engaging them in the reasons that they love the university, whether it's through student recruitment or through Penn State athletics, making sure that we are seen as the portal of access to that for alumni. And so it's a great time to be here at Penn State because we can together kind of put our fingerprints on the future model that's going to be in place for serving alumni.
You mentioned staying relevant in every aspect of life. Let's just take elections. People will say, well, newspaper endorsements don't mean anything now in the modern era of social media. How does the Alumni Association go about staying relevant to the freshman that's walking past Old Main for the first time?
Yeah, so we have to really look at it through their perspective. The first way we do it is we ask them, what do you expect from, not necessarily from the Alumni Association, but what do you expect from your lifelong relationship with the university, which I see the association kind of being the curator of. And so and also recognizing that answer is going to shift as that graduate is further removed from their experience at Penn State. And so initially it might be, I want to stay connected to the to my friends, and I want to stay connected to those faculty members that challenged me and made me, aspire to be, what I wanted to be professionally. So it's connecting them. It might be help with career-related issues and helping launch their career and helping them become career changers. And so, the emphasis on a reunion might not be as relevant as connecting them to the vast network of Penn Staters, to the power of the Penn State Alumni Network, as it will be as they get older. So.
Last question that I typically end when we have guests from Penn State, it does involve Joe Paterno.
Sure.
Fran Fisher, great friend of WHVL,
Yeah.
he once said that he was worried that kids coming into Penn State, much like the freshman I just talked about, would not know who Joe Paterno was.
Right.
And he said, how could that be? Your thoughts on where Joe Paterno will be, and maybe how can the Alumni Association help in restoring Joe Paterno's name to the university in more than just the name on a library?
Yeah. Well, that there's still kind of things out there
Yes.
that are
Yes.
precluding the university from moving forward. When the university does move forward, the Alumni Association will be front and center on honoring Coach in a way that's appropriate and continues his legacy here at this university. I grew up a Penn State fan. I grew up loving Joe Paterno. In an Irish Catholic family, we had a picture of Jesus, we had a picture of the Pope, and we had a picture of Joe Paterno on the wall. And so, and it wasn't because he was a great football coach. It's because he set a compass for all of us to live our lives by. So I really just see us. There's not an official position from the Alumni Association on that topic. But we are the only organization that dedicated a full issue of our magazine to him. He's class of 73 honorary alumni, and his family is still involved across campus today. And so honor the life, honor the legacy is something that when it's appropriate for the Alumni Association to do, we'll do it.
I'm sure that would make your job a lot easier re-engaging those alumni as well. You're watching WHVL's For the Record. Thank you for joining us this morning. I want to give a big thank you to Paul Clifford, the CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association.